Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here, John Sneisen, and so we're seeing a huge rise in unemployment in Canada, and we'll get more into that in a moment, but first I want to read this article from the Financial Post, which says, Canada sheds 51,600 jobs to push up unemployment rate, but full-time work rises. And as the article goes into, the Canadian economy lost 51,600 net jobs last month in a decrease that drove up the unemployment rate and essentially wiped out the big gain in July. Statistics Canada's labor force survey says the jobless rate hit 6% in August, up from 5.8% in July. Economists had expected an increase of 5,000 jobs for the month and the unemployment rate to be 5.9%, according to Thomson Reuters Econ. The employment drop last month was fueled by a loss of 92,000 part-time positions, but on the positive side, the number of full-time jobs rose by 40,400. The August decline followed a comparable net increase of 54,100 positions in July. Ontario experienced the biggest decrease of the provinces by far, with a loss of 80,100 jobs, almost all of which were part-time positions. Compared with 12 months earlier, national employment was up 0.9% following the addition of 171,700 jobs, including 326,100 full-time positions. So I want to break out of this article for a second, John, and I want to talk about the fact that first of all, there's a huge amount of public sector jobs mixed in there when the government just hands people jobs. Second of all, the whole number is completely skewed when you actually look at the labor force participation rate because, of course, like the United States, like so many other countries, they hide a lot of the unemployment in the labor force participation rate numbers. And when you look at the labor force participation rate numbers, you realize that they basically just say once someone's been looking for a certain amount of time and stops looking, it's like, oh,
60 to 90 days, I believe.
Yeah, 60 to 90 days. Oh, they're no longer unemployed, so we'll take them out of the stats for the unemployed. That's just a scam. That's a good way to cover up real numbers and make Trudeau sound real good, which I think most Canadians realize. I would hope at this point that that's not quite the case. But of course, that is just massive centralized government. That's giant government. That is watered down socialism, communism, light. It's going in that direction, folks. And the thing is, we have this massive government centralized authority that takes over the markets, taxes people to death, pushes people into servitude, prints a currency out of thin air, creates vast inflation, and one after another, we have these massive bubbles popping up all over the country, whether it's real estate, whether it's pensions, whether it's, I mean, look at household debt was up to $1.8 trillion a few months ago that I saw, which is an insane amount of money. I mean, folks, this, even if it wasn't Trudeau, we'd have this problem because...
You mean Trudeau?
Yeah, I mean, even if it was the leader of the NDP, whether it was Scheer, it's because government centralizes everything. Do you think Trudeau, who's a complete moron, I can't even imagine can put his shoes on in the morning, needs his wife to put them on for him while he hugs his puppet or whatever you call it?
Oh, the unicorn.
Yeah, the unicorn. I can't even imagine that he can go out and write policy. The guy's a puppet. He's a spokesman. I saw for myself when I confronted him last year that they give the media 5 questions to ask him and he has a script in front of him and he just reads the replies that were already predetermined by someone else. Folks, this guy is a complete moron. The guy doesn't know what he's doing. This isn't all just Trudeau. This is the problem of government in general getting involved, creating problems, and then central banking on top of that. And we have a vast amount of poverty. We have the carbon tax, which is a tax on everything. It's bringing up prices left, right, and center. Rural communities are getting dried out because of it. It's causing huge concerns, but they're like, Trudeau, for the most part, has done a great job of creating jobs. Well, no, first of all, he hides a bunch of the numbers in the labor force participation rate, and he creates a vast amount of government jobs, and we saw that in places like Venezuela, too. Are we going to say, well, Venezuela they're creating so many jobs, their employment rate's just grand, we should all be like Venezuela? I think not. John, what do you think about this?
Well, I actually going to put in a complaint from the dinosaurs in the Carboniferous era to Trudeau that they feel offended by the carbon tax because it's pure blatant racism, Trudeau, to tax dinosaurs. It's very bad. And of course, you like a unicorn. A unicorn, came out of the dinosaur era. So, but back to something serious.
Oh my God. These metaphors are horrible. Go on.
Hey, Josh, don't talk like that. Come on. we're going to look at, of course, you talked about the labor force participation rate, Josh, and when you take a look at it, it's right now it's about 65.4%, and that means that about 35%, 34.6% is not what in the workforce, in the labor force, 36.9%. That's a little bit higher than that 6%. Now, of course, there's some retirees in there that they mix into it, early retirees and so on. But still, that's a very, very high number compared to, the 6% that we are getting told. And it's not only Canada. This is, an invention of the economists around the world. They were trying to, make their numbers look a lot better than they were. So they had to find a way out of, the crumbling numbers of people that are unemployed. And so they took away, they're not unemployed anymore when they're on constant government welfare. They're just an employee of the government. Yeah, that's what they are when they're on welfare. They're an employee of the government, Josh. So I'm just going to show you one more stat here. And this one shows Canada's unemployed persons, so unemployed people in Canada. And if you actually follow this chart a little bit closer, you'll see that it almost follows market crises and market crashes. So you see the record low hits right before crisis starts. So it's interesting. I think we're looking at something here that is trying to tell us something, that when you're at this maximum employment that they have right now in the economy, you're going to get to a point where suddenly they racked up all this debt, and now there's trying to look for an exit strategy. They got to pay off that debt, but they don't have the money to pay it off because they created of course share buybacks and all this stuff, the corporations, in order to they just financialized themselves. They didn't invent anything. It was no real growth really in the economy, Josh, that we saw from 2008 till now. It's mostly just financial fluff that was created, and fake assets around the world that was pumped up, and of course Canada is going to be one of the centerpieces in this new calamity, because in my book Canada, the Greatest Economy in the World, I asked these questions, like what about all this massive debt that the Canadians are racking up, both the government and the private sector. Nobody was really talking about it in 2015, but in 2016-17, you started to see a little bit more. But now we're actually starting to talk about the debt problems in Canada. The major mainstream media articles out there talking about some serious issues in the debt. But not to mention, the biggest problem, as you said, Josh, it's the government. The government is so massive that, now it's, of course, they stopped giving out the numbers of government expenditure to GDP. I would have to calculate. I think I'm going to try to calculate them so we can actually get them out there. But I would say they're probably closer to 50%. And, what happens with governments that have over 50%, most of them have collapsed. Look at, Greece, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Ireland. All of them are almost up at 50% or above when they collapse their economies in debt.
Yeah, and how is this good for any of you? How is this good for any Canadian out there when it comes to, we have income tax, we have property taxes, corporate taxes, capital gains taxes, these business taxes, fuel taxes, eco taxes, PST, GST, in some places MST. We have all these taxes, and on top of that we have, and that just barely scratches the surface, but then we also have, the carbon tax, which is a tax on everything like I mentioned. And I mean, this is a problem of government. Think about it for a second. What is government? Well, government is, one shade, one color or another color of a sports team that only has any authority because a whole bunch of people collectively believe it's a right, it's a it's a lesser of the evils, it's a greater good of the greater number. And this ridiculous mantra that people just chant over and over and over again. And in the end, it's an organized crime racket that has been given fodder by the populace, by an apathetic, very confused populace. When you have these massive orders, these collectives that say, I know what's best for all of you. So let's see, is it fair to the right for the left to say, I know what's better for you, so I'm going to enforce my rule because we are the majority? Is it all right for the left, for the right to come up and say, we know what's best for you because we think we have a better idea, it's our opinion, so we're going to force it at gunpoint on you? Either way, you will have the minority oppressed by the majority, and in Canada's case, actually the minority oppressing the majority, considering Trudeau got, 30-something% when he was voted for? I mean, this is this is collectivism. This is a whole group of people thinking that their good ideas need to be used or need to be forced on the populace at gunpoint. And if you disagree, you're locked up, you are killed. I mean, look at what's happening in Brazil, for example. You have one president, he's in prison, and he was leading his party to victory once again. Yeah, Lula. And then you have the opposition, the number one opposition, who is looking like, hey, he was going to win, and he gets stabbed yesterday. He has people getting sent after him to kill him. The other guy's in prison. It's organized crime, and if you think Canada is any different, you're wrong. It's always the same thing. Government begets more government. Even small government grows, and you don't cut 95% of the cancerous tumor out and leave 5% there, because that 5% will grow, and it will continue to grow, and then you have to cut it again and again and again, and it never ends. It's a circular movement, folks. It just goes around in a circle for eternity, and the fact of the matter is, when you push your views on other people at gunpoint, you are no better than the ones that push their views that you disagree with on you at gunpoint. I mean, it's absolutely criminal. There's nothing wrong with voluntary governance, but we are born into the social contract system where we're born, and apparently we sign this contract that says we sign our rights away, and now the government can tell me what to do because a vast amount of stupid people got together in big numbers, and now they got the upper hand, and now I'm forced to do whatever they tell me to do, or else I go to jail. For the left, it's like, well, we want to legalize cannabis. Okay, great, whatever, even though there's a lot more to it than that, as we reported on before. But then they're like, but we want to tax you to death. We want to steal all that money. We want to raise massive amounts of debt around the country, where Ontario has a bigger debt than California, folks, which is insane. And then you have the central banking power and all that. And then you have people on the right that are like, well, I don't think you should have legal marijuana, so I'm going to point guns at you and you're not going to be able to smoke it. You should go to jail for that degeneracy and all that. But we need to lower taxes, and it's like, yeah, you have some good ideas, you have some bad ideas, but in the end, you're just a sports team. You're wearing a color for your team, and you are adamantly pushing for your ideas to force on the other people, and in the end, it's collective oppression. There is a little thing called freedom, and freedom and individual liberty go down to the individual, not a giant collective. Giant collectives do not determine liberty. Government cannot give you freedom. They can only take it away. Only you can give yourself freedom. Only you are born intrinsically with freedom within you, and then this massive criminal entity pulls it away from you, tries to take it away from you, tries to muzzle you, tries to stop any ideas that you might have that you think will better your own life, because they say, we know what's best for you, whether it be the nanny state, whether it be the police state, whether it be this extortion racket coming around stealing your money and putting it into inefficient products, or sending it overseas to go kill innocent children, and then funding and arming the rebels that you create in that cause, these already very extremist people, and then bringing them over and then pushing them into the Canadian populace, causing divide and conquer. We all fight each other for our different form or flavor of this religion of statism, instead of fighting the real enemy that is creating the problem in the first place. It's all organized, it's all scripted, and it's all meant to push you on your knees with the chains you revere, and force you off that cliff eventually, because you're just an animal on a farm. You're a cattle on a farm surrounded by fence. You eat the grass and you say, everything's all right. I feel great because I got grass to eat, so I'm free. But you pay no attention to that giant fence around you, and before you know it, they're leading you off to the slaughter, and you have a big smile on your face, and you say, oh, well, it wasn't that grand. I had freedom. Freedom, that isn't freedom, folks.
Well, it's basically Trudeau riding on a unicorn into the slaughterhouse with you behind him, because you thought that unicorn was so cute and fluffy. You know, it's insane, Josh. I want to make some points here. Like, for example, in this Financial Post article here, they talk about how, you lost 92,000 jobs last month, but then they gained 40,400 full-time jobs because it was part-time jobs that dropped. So now it's, oh yeah, it's all great because we gained, full-time jobs. But what about, like, even if every single, like, if there was people that had 2 part-time jobs there that got 1 job, there would still be 11,600 people left that would have no jobs there, of course, and no benefit. And of course, those numbers are higher. But I just want to say one last thing, because you were talking about Brazil and politicians, getting stabbed. It seems to be like the Roman Empire, the fall of any great government that have existed throughout time. It just ends up in politicians just going and killing each other and attacking each other. And, of course, what other things have the Brazilian government does that Canada is kind of repeating? Well, they had the Olympics. And then they had the World Cup. Well, look at Canada had the Olympics, and now we're having the World Cup soon. We had the Women's World Cup in soccer. So it's just mass amounts of spending, that you such a tremendous amount of ways that the private sector could definitely, come up and just spend that money if they wanted to create some, great sporting events. But no, the government is getting into all that debt and stealing from the future of all of your children that you have in order to just have some fun right now and be on that heroin binge of, feeling very great about being Canadian. And, they're trying to build you up into, being a cohesive, collective, because they believe in that you're a group and you're Canadian. So everybody that is coming outside, you should fight them. Like, it's all, an illusion, this whole collective that gets built around us, Josh. And it's falling apart as we speak, because more and more people are waking up every single day here in Canada, not believing, the Hegelian dialectic problem, reaction, solution. It's coming to an end, Josh. And people are starting to understand that we need to get rid of this government, because the government and, of course, the banksters that are out there, they are the real poison to the economy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is coming at us from all sides, folks. We need to be vigilant. We need to be independent. We need to look to ourselves for answers instead of saying a new puppet's going to change things. Because how's that worked out over the last 100 years? It's like, well, this guy's better than that guy, so let's replace him. Oh, that guy's terrible. Let's replace him with this guy. Oh, that guy's terrible. Let's replace him with this guy. Same thing in all these different countries around the world. It just repeats over and over and over again for eternity. When will it end, folks? When will we look to ourselves for answers instead of hoping, dependently on our knees, hoping for these criminal cartel members, the new head of the mafia, to change things for us? Because they won't. They will only make things worse. It's all a script. It all goes down the line, and it continues to worsen as time goes on, and it will never end as long as we keep perpetuating this in a circle for eternity. And I mean, I just don't know what else to say when it comes to that, folks. We need to look to ourselves. We need to decentralize our lives, look to decentralized methods to replace government. Look to the fact that, all these programs that they bring forward that under the guise of free stuff and helping people actually creates a problem in the first place. It's like, well, we need government healthcare. Well, actually, you create that government healthcare, you monopolize a few pharmaceutical rackets around the world, these massive corporations, after stealing from the populace to give to them, then you bring up the price of the medicine and the treatment, causing an even worse problem. So then you say, well, look, the medicine's so expensive, we need government to fix this. So then you put more government into it, put more money into it, the price rises again, we go in a circle again, it never ends. We just continuously perpetuate this forever. And we create the problems, and then we look to the solution, and that solution always happens to be government again, so then it's a problem all over again. And we just swing around in a circle for eternity, just trying the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Yeah, well, let's just end on this, Josh. Think about this. If you actually took the real unemployment in Canada, you have to get rid of all the government workers, because they're not really employed in a sense, because they're all stealing from the people that are actually having real jobs, producing something into the economy. So the real unemployment rate should be minus all the government workers, and then suddenly you have a 50% unemployment rate in Canada, because there's so many people working in unproductive government stealing from everybody else.
Yeah, the free market has the answer, folks. We have this ability to innovate and be productive on the market while actually competing, instead of having government propped up monopolies at the very top, pushing the small businesses out of the market. We can have new cures for diseases on the free market. We can have new treatments. We can have new marvels, technological marvels, things that make our life easier and better.
There's no cartels.
Yeah, and in that case, you have real competition. And with competition, you have real innovation. And with innovation, you have more production, more employment. You you have higher wages, you continuously push that on because you have more and more businesses sprouting up, so you have vast employment all around the country. It would be amazing, but of course government has to stick their nose in it, whether it be fascistic government, whether it be socialistic, no matter what
flavor.
yeah, no matter what flavor, it's a left-right paradigm. And I mean, in the end, I always found it interesting, finishing off on this idea of, Marx. Karl Marx thought, well, I have a way to fix the problems of these capitalists, even though it wasn't capitalism, it was government, patent offices, etc. I have an idea on how to fix this. How about we steal from capitalists and then give it to the poor? Okay, so let's think about that for a second. The poor, mostly unemployed, and then mostly working for government and monopolized businesses, and then you depend on capitalists to give money to people who don't do any work and sit on their butt all day. And then let's think about how this works out. Well, eventually you steal all of the capitalists' money, and then you end up
run out of the country and you can't get their money.
Yeah, and then you have no one. It's funny how the socialists, the Marxists especially, depend on capitalists to survive, but then attack capitalists all the time. And I want to, one more thing before I finish, is that this idea that people say, well, that's not real socialism, and other people say, well, that's not real capitalism. And both might be right technically, but let's look at what kind of capitalism has done. Capitalism has led to the creation of millions and millions of jobs and brought millions and millions out of poverty. Kind of socialism has led to the death of millions of people and has just destroyed jobs and created vast poverty. If that's if that's only kind of capitalism, I would love to see real capitalism. If that's only kind of socialism, then God forbid we ever see real socialism, because folks, in the end, this is all going to water down into bigger government as it goes. It always grows. It's a tumor, like I said, and we have to look to ourselves for the answer. So anyway, with that, I just wanted to say all of this stuff about the government, folks, because it's important, because we have a lot of people that watch us that hate Trudeau, rightly so. I don't like him either. I'm the one that called him a scumbag to his face. But with that said, they look to other governmental leaders. We have, well, Andrew Scheer or Maxime Bernier or that NDP guy that I always forget the name of. I just over and over again looking to other people to fix their own problems, which is childish. It's looking up to mommy and daddy your entire life. Instead of looking to yourself, you just never grow up, and you always look at mommy and daddy government to protect you. And that isn't how you actually gain true freedom, the freedom that you're born with but was quickly swiped away from you. So anyway, thanks for going into this with us, John. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth. Be the change. Like what you see here, OM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so overwhelmingly demonetized by YouTube as they bring in the ADL to flag all of our content as hate speech. Also check our Bitcoin address in the description as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also check us out at Steemit at Josh Sigurdson, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post in cryptocurrency, Steem that is. So don't forget to check us out there and find us at Anarchapulco 2019. I know it's early, but this is such an exciting event coming up with Ron Paul, Judge Napolitano, David Icke, Larkin Rose, Jeff Berwick, all the usual characters, and it's going to be amazing. So we hope to see you there. Make sure to check the link for Anarchapulco below and use promo code WHAM to save as much as 15% on your tickets. We hope to see you there. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.